Hi everyone and welcome to the Allplane Podcast, where I talk with the innovators and entrepreneurs that are transforming the aviation industry. First of all, the usual reminder that you can find all previous episodes of this podcast, as well as many other aviation stories on our website, Allplane.tv. That's ALLPLANE.tv. For today's episode, we are going to Scandinavia, to Sweden to be more exact. The Nordic countries have been long leading the way in aviation sustainability, and our guest today has been pretty much at the center of it. Maria Fiskerud is a project leader at the Nordic Network for Electric Aviation, spelled as NEA, N-E-A. But this is just one of several roles and responsibilities that she has had in the Nordic green aviation scene. Maria has recently been selected as one of Sweden's sustainability thought leaders by Swedish newspaper Dagens Opinion. She has also been an early champion for sustainable aviation fuel. She used to work for Dutch firm Sky Energy, one of the pioneering firms in this space, and then she went out to found and manage Flygreenfund, an organization that promotes the adoption of sustainable aviation fuel in Sweden by letting corporations and individuals pay for sustainable aviation fuel when they fly. Maria has also been at RISE, a Swedish research institute that, among other things, works in the field of green aviation, has been involved with the ELISE project, which is a scientific initiative to make aviation greener, and she is also an advisor to Heart Aerospace, a very interesting Swedish electric aviation startup that is currently developing a 19-seat passenger plane. And she also advises several airports in Sweden that are investing in sustainable flight projects. So there is plenty to talk about today, and Maria will help us disentangle this very diverse and rich ecosystem of programs and organizations that are currently working in the sustainable aviation space in the Nordic countries. She will also give us her personal perspective about what is going on in one of the regions of the world that is farthest ahead when it comes to decarbonizing aviation. So without further ado, let me welcome Maria to the podcast. Hello, Maria. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Very well. I wanted to have this conversation ready for quite some time because there's so much going on right now in the Nordics and in Sweden in particular with green aviation. And you are pretty much at the center of it. All the different programs and initiatives that are taking place right now in sustainable aviation in Sweden. This episode is going to be a good occasion to do a bit of recap and get an idea of all the interesting stuff that is going on. But first of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? You are a consultant and you have been involved in a number of sustainable aviation projects in Sweden. Among them is the Nordic Network for Electric Aviation, that it's also spelled as NEA, N-E-A. You are also part of ELISE, that is another program you're going to tell us about. You also been working as a consultant with projects like Heart Aerospace, which is a very interesting, cool electric aircraft project that is being developed in Sweden at the moment. And also you are involved in some other projects that concern regional airports in Sweden that are also active in the field of sustainable aviation. So a lot going on here. Tell us about yourself and how you got into this world of sustainable aviation.
Thank you. Yes, it seems like a lot when you tell it like that. And it's if you look into sustainable aviation, I have been working for a long time in the field since I've been part of it in 7 years. And as you know, it's a quite young field. So it's only, I think, 12, 13 years now. So I've been half of the time, I'm basically been into this field. And I kind of started in the field by accident, if I could call it that. I was working at the time for AkzoNobel, a chemistry company, a global chemistry company.
That carries the name of Nobel, the famous Swedish scientist and entrepreneur that set up the Nobel Prize. Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And AXO is the Dutch company. So this is the Dutch-Swedish company. I had all my managers, or part of my managers, in Amsterdam. At the time, we had a lot of laydowns in Sweden in the chemistry industry. So I was actually working a lot with closing the industry, or as part of the industry in Sweden. And that's it's a tough area to work with. And after a while, it takes, even if you are not the one getting laid off, it takes a lot of your energy to work with that kind of questions. So then I was asked if I wanted to join another Dutch company that was wanted to build a new industry in Sweden and the Nordics, and that was Sky Energy. At the moment, it seemed really like a good idea. I have been working with sustainability for a long time, and I also see the need of flying both in our country, since it's very stretched countries here in the Nordics, but also I have friends and family in the US, and I want to visit them every once in a while, and I would like to do it in a sustainable way. So there was also a personal wish to make this area more sustainable, I would say.
Sky Energy is one of the most active players in the field of sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, as commonly known in the industry. It's a very active player in this field. Just a note here for the listeners that might not be familiar with it.
Sky Energy's task was to kickstart the market for sustainable aviation fuel. And they were in contact with the Swedish airport, Karlstad Airport, which is the airport of the town where I live. And they had the municipality had told the airport here in Karlstad that they needed to be more sustainable. So therefore, they have looked for friends and partners around the world to find someone to work together with, and they found Sky Energy. And Sky Energy was pretty much the only player at the time in this field. So they started to work together, and they needed someone to take charge of the fund that they wanted to start to develop the fund. The Flygreenfund was the name of it. And that is a fund where you share the cost, the premium cost, when you go from fossil to fossil free. Okay. Because they realized that no one else could pay or take the cost themselves. So that needed to be shared.
I want to stop you here for a second, because you mentioned the Flygreenfund, which is one of the different entities or organizations that are active in the Swedish sustainable aviation landscape. And I think, I'm going to ask you to give us a bit of an overview about all these different organizations, because it can be confusing to know who is who and who does what. There is, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is the Flygreenfund that you were mentioning. Then there is the Nordic Network for Electric Aviation that you are also part of. And this is supported by Nordic Innovation, which is a public agency that funds sustainability projects in Sweden and Scandinavia. Then there is ELISE, that is a different program that is also related. There's another initiative called the Fossil Free Aviation 2045 that works in parallel with the other ones we mentioned. So can you tell us a little bit about each of these and how they all fit together?
Fossil Free Aviation 2045 is a cluster organization that holds all the ecosystem. And it's been a project up until this year. And now is kind of recreating, we are kind of recreating, I would say, the Fossil Free Aviation 2045 as an economic organization. So it could be more long lasting and not be a project. And that's owned by the ecosystem around the fossil free aviation. So it's all from the forestry owners to the forestry industry, to the chemical industry, to the sustainable fuel industry, biorefineries, so on and so forth, but also airliners, airports, and the tourist industry. So they are kind of all in that and working together towards a fossil-free aviation 2045 in Sweden and all domestic travel 2030. And that's also the goals that the government has. We have also what we call fossil-free Sweden to make it even more complicated. But Fossil-Free Sweden is an organization underneath the government, and they are working together with all the different industries in Sweden. So inside Fossil-Free Sweden, all different industries are making their roadmaps or writing their roadmaps. So that's also been done by the aviation industry. Then Fossil-Free Aviation 2045 have taken kind of or are working with the implementation of the roadmap.
Okay, and you have a specific projects to make this a reality then?
Yes, but now we are trying to make it more long term. So we are creating this economic association now. So we'll move over from, we are doing that this spring, actually, right now, to move it from a project to an economic association. And I, when it was a project, I was the project manager for that project as well, or a cluster manager, as we also,
and
as the title was.
And Flygreenfund is also part of this, or is it separate?
Sure. They all part of it, but Flygreenfund is also an economic association, and I was the founder and built it. So that was my first task. And Sky Energy was part owner, and NISA, the Nordic Initiative Sustainable Aviation, and the airport of Karlstad was all owners of this economic association.
And
it's still up and running.
And what does it do?
What Flygreenfund is doing is you can actually already now buy sustainable aviation fuel for your flights, being a business or being a private person. And you pay for your trip. Flygreenfund is gathering all the money, and then they buy fuel for the money and put it into the Swedish system. So it's kind of the same way as we buy what we call green electricity in Sweden. For example, here at home, I pay for sustainable electricity or zero carbon electricity that are made in my county. So I pay a little bit extra for that. But I mean, to my house, it might be another kind of electricity, because you never know where the neutrons go, right?
Yes.
And it's the same idea here. You pay for your part in the system, but then it might not be in the airplane that you are flying on. So that's how Flygreenfund is working. It's similar to the KLM corporate program, for example, but we learned a lot from the KLM corporate program when we founded Flygreenfund, but in Sweden, we thought about the Nordics. We wanted to expand to the Nordics. We are too small to just have one airport and one airliner. We wanted to include them all.
But SAS has a program now as well that lets passengers pay extra for the sustainable aviation fuel, which is more expensive than the traditional fuel. And in the booking process, you can pay more as an add-on, as an ancillary. They ask you if you want to top it up buying the fuel. Austrian Airlines they released also a few days ago similar program. It's embedded in the booking process, so it's relatively easy to do that. In the Flygreenfund, how does it work? Is it individual people that are putting money into the fund?
In the Flygreenfund, and I just want to say, most of the airliners in Sweden, you can actually buy sustainable aviation fuel with your ticket.
Okay.
So that's, but if you want to fly with an airliner that don't have it in their ticket, or you can buy it from them, then you can. We have something in Sweden we call Swish.
Okay.
It's when you pay with your phone.
Yeah.
You just send a payment with your phone. So you can do that. So when you're on the airport and you decide that you want to fly, you just switch money over to the Flygreenfund. We have calculated for 1 hour, it's about 300 Swedish kroners, about 30 euros for 1 hour flying. So if you want to be 100% sustainable aviation fuel, then that's about what you have to pay. We also, Flygreenfund also have agreements with businesses. So then you make an agreement on a yearly basis.
How's been the uptake? Are there many businesses contributing to this? Do they do it just for the sake of doing a contribution, just as they would do a donation to some good cause?
Well, this you can actually use in your sustainability report.
Okay.
Yeah, because you are since you are flying on sustainable aviation fuel. At the moment, there is since this is so new with sustainable aviation fuel, we don't really have the regulations in place. So at the moment, you don't get the credits for the credits don't follow the fuel, so to speak. So that makes it a little bit different. So that's something we need to look into, how to be able, because then it could actually be a scoop 2 in your sustainability report. But right now you can pay for it, and then you have to, in your sustainability report, you have to treat it as a scope 3.
Okay, and then there are other. These initiatives, they include the whole industry, so sustainable aviation fuel. Then you have specific programs that cover the electric aviation initiatives. What can you tell us about those? Because then you have, there is the Nordic Network for Electric Aviation, where you are a project manager at the moment. And then there is Elise. What can you tell us about that?
I just want to end with that since I was the CEO and I built the Flygreenfund for 3 years, but now it's still ongoing, and I will be on their board meeting today to tell them more about the fossil-free aviation 2045, but it's still vibrant. And I think actually after this Corona, I think that hopefully it will take off even more, because Flygreenfund is still strong market builder for sustainable aviation fuel, I would say.
Yeah, and especially in Sweden, it's been the country where all these environmental issues of aviation have been most highlighted, right? I mean, you have all this movement for we can talk about this later if you wish, all this movement about the flight scam.
Stay on the ground.
Yeah.
Or
so like flight shaming, flight shaming, and all these things, which I guess some of these initiatives you're working on are actually also response to that. I mean, in finding ways to make aviation more sustainable. So yeah, we were about to go into the electric part of it. What can you tell us about it?
I have one more puzzle piece of the puzzle that I need. So from Flygreenfund, when I worked there, I saw that, this is a huge market. A lot of people want to fly on sustainable aviation fuel, and they are actually willing to pay. So what do we do now? The Flygreenfund also made it possible for us. We actually have most airports in Sweden, I think for any country in the world, that have used sustainable aviation fuel. We were the biggest user of sustainable aviation fuel. That means, it's a small part, because even if Sweden bought all the fuel produced today, sustainable aviation fuel produced today, it wouldn't cover our needs, because it's that small production. So when I started to think about this, I thought, we need more production. We need more production because there's more people that want to fly on it, and we need more production so we hopefully can lower the prices. So then I started to look around, because working from the platform of an electric or from an economic association is difficult to do the really big steps, like kickstarting the production, because that's what was the next step that
Because is it
from my point
producing?
of view, I saw that we needed to do. So then I moved over to the Research Institute of Sweden and worked together with SAS and Swedavia to found Fossil Free Aviation 2045. So that organization has actually worked more with getting kickstarted production, so we actually have fuel to fly on
Yeah,
when we
I
want to
was
do it.
about to ask you that. Is there production in Sweden at the moment of sustainable aviation fuel, or you bring it from somewhere else, from Holland or from Finland? Or...
Yes, we bring it from somewhere else. It's some production up and coming, but at the moment we are importing.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, we have all the pieces in the puzzle to actually do it ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
this been a mystery, I think I would
I
say.
guess biomass can be a big part of the story here. Sweden, there's a lot of forestry, and that can be used in some of these processes to build basically a pipeline, or well, pipeline, not a metaphorical pipeline here in this case, but we're talking about fuel, basically to get raw material to build all this fuel, right?
Yeah, and I will say it's important then, because sometimes I think that biomaterial is maybe a little bit misunderstood. In a country like Sweden, where we have so much forest, we will not take down any forest to make fuel, because that would be too expensive. But since we already are doing a lot with the forest, for example, building houses, we are, well, using the timber, we have the mills, we have the paper mills and so on and so forth. So there's always, and there's sawmills. So we always have
There's waste, right? The residue.
waste,
Yeah,
residues.
yeah.
And the residues, that's what, because today we just mostly burn it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what we should use to make fuel from.
Yeah. Yeah, or otherwise it wouldn't be labeled as sustainable, right? I mean, if you could potentially do it from biomass, but if you're destroying more biomass than you would otherwise, then it could hardly be labeled as sustainable. So
That's true.
yeah, so and same with crops as well. Right? That's something that it's a prerequisite to be considered sustainable, is that you're not subtracting from other uses of land. So what are the prospects for this production in Sweden? Are there any specific plans to build some refineries?
When we got the money for the cluster, the Fossil Free Aviation 2045, the Swedish government gave 100 million Swedish kroners. So one part was the innovation cluster, and then there were 17 other projects, more technical projects, that have now been working with the technical part to get a refinery up and running. We also now had a new call with another 100 Swedish million kroners that will we will know in June, July who gets the money. So yes, we are getting closer and closer, and actually this year I feel much more confident in saying that we hear more and more now clusters that work together, that have more muscles, have more economical muscles. Before it's been more research projects, but
Yeah.
now there's actually projects with the big players, if I could call it that,
more
involved as
commercially
well.
commercial
More commercially,
applications.
yeah. And we already now know that, for example, ST1 and Preem, I think 2023, they will have sustainable aviation fuel and so on and so forth. So I think there's a good chance. And what I really think is the mix between the biomass and electrofuels, because if you mix the two, it will be 1 + 1 is 3, so you will get even more out of it. So I think now when the electrofuel technique in place, I think we will actually see, because since we both have, we have the clean electricity in the Nordics, and we also have the biomass. So that gives us even more opportunities to make something really sustainable and very sufficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a note, let me add a note here. 100 million Swedish krona is around 10 million euros, or around $11-12 million. Just adding the note here for the listeners outside Sweden, so that you can get a frame of reference here of the amounts we're talking about. You have sustainable aviation fuel projects, then electric. What can you tell us about electric? Because that's an area where there's some interesting projects as well in Sweden. Possibly the most eye-catching one is this hard aerospace electric aircraft, but that's just part of a broader, not a program itself, but there's different initiatives that are aiming in this direction.
That's true. And since we had all these, we had the network in place for sustainable aviation fuel, fossil-free aviation, then also the electric aviation came and asked us to join as well, since we already had the ecosystem in it. So the first part that we started with was the Nordic network for electric aviation. And that's a network where the Nordics work together to kickstart the electric the use of electric aviation. So there we look for standards, we look for the different parts that we need to have in place for the airport, for example. That's one work package. We have one work package that are looking into what kind of new business models that we can find around electric aviation. We have one that look more into what kind of challenges do we have here, like snow and wind and bad weather, and what do we have to think about? Also, in the Nordics, we are looking more into regional electric aviation, and a lot of other projects in the world, they are more looking into city close.
Yeah, the urban air mobility.
Yeah. So that's also...
Yeah, I had the chance to have here in the podcast the head of carbon reduction at Avinor, the Norwegian airport authority, that is very active as well in the field of electric aviation. And we commented that in Scandinavia, it's very suitable, even if there are some range and capacity limitations, because there are so many routes that are low density in small communities, in places where there are distances that are quite long to do by road or by train, but or where the geography is complicated, like in Norway, but still they are between range of the carbon electric aircraft technology. So it could be flights of half an hour, long flights or things like that, or even shorter in some cases. So I guess in Sweden it's a bit similar. You also have a country that the territory is very large, but there are many small communities that are scattered all over the place, right? So it makes sense to join them to the network in a clean way, and electric aviation might be a solution for that.
Yeah. Now, Norway is even more special, if I could call it that.
Because they have the mountains as well, and the fjords.
Yes, and the fjords. Yeah, we don't really have that. But I do. We do have a lot of. We have a very long country, and there's a lot. We have a lot of our country where no one lives at all. So what we actually want to do is build buses with wings, I guess you could say. So this is actually regional traffic. And also we need regional traffic between our Nordic countries. We need to work more together and collaborate more. And when we join forces in the Nordics, we're actually the 12th biggest economy in the world, which gives us some power to do something.
Yeah.
And I would agree with Olav. It was very much, I would say, Norway, they started all this in the world globally when they said that they want all their domestic traffic to be electrified by 2040.
Is there a similar commitment in Sweden to get domestic air traffic reach a certain degree of electrification or decarbonization at a specific date? Or it's more of a long-term program that doesn't really set up a hard deadline?
We actually have a goal that says that domestic aviation should be fossil-free 2030, but we don't say what technical solution. We think very much that we need all the technical solutions that we have, that we know now, and probably in 2045 we will even have technical solutions that we don't even know about today.
Why
So we think hydrogen also will be part of this.
why 2045 was chosen as a date for the
Well,
program?
2045 is the date that we have set for fossil-free Sweden.
Okay.
So it's just to align the
Mm-hmm.
aviation industry in Sweden with all other industries.
And that would include international flights as well. So it would be 2030 domestic. So all domestic flights should be carbon free, and 2045 all activity basically.
And we say fossil free, but because there is a difference, we need to be better on calculating the carbons or the CO2 levels. So and actually if you change, if you are calculating on the life cycle calculation, even if you change all your fuel to sustainable aviation fuel, you still have some carbons on your account, right? So that's why we talk about fossil-free aviation. Because we need to learn more and know more about how you calculate with the carbons.
What about these organizations, Nordic Network for Electric Aviation and ELISE? Do they follow a similar structure as the Flygreenfund and Fossil Free Aviation 2045, or are they also a kind of an organization to get together all the ecosystem, or are there government organizations? What's the governance here?
Well, the network for electric aviation is mostly the aviation, the airliners and the airport industry in the Nordics.
Okay.
And they are very much connected to our governments.
And they are Nordic in scope, so it's not just Sweden, but you have here Norway and Finland and Denmark, and I think Iceland and Greenland as well included, right?
Yes, they are all included. And the difference between the NIA and ELISE is that ELISE is a Swedish project, and that's more based on the academic world to build up the research and the academic world around electric aviation, so we can have the foundation and the work for a new for a new path of the aviation industry that we already have in Sweden. The industry, since we already have the aviation industry in Sweden, and this is the project to kind of build on that history and the knowledge we have.
And if I look for the Nordic Network for Electric Aviation in Google, it comes up on a site of Nordic Innovation. So Nordic Innovation, from what I learned, is government organization that is funding many of these programs. And by Nordic, the fact that it's called Nordic, I guess it's several governments are involved in this. So it's a sort of a coordinated effort.
Yeah. So all our Nordic ministers meet in the Nordic Minister Organization. I'm not sure what it's called in English. And then they have this Nordic Innovation and, for example, Nordic Energy Research and other organizations where we can apply for money when we do joint efforts for the whole of the Nordics.
Very interesting. So in this context, what are the most promising, in your opinion, the most promising directions in which all these programs are moving? I mean, are there any milestones in the immediate future? I'm not referring just to the 2030 milestone that we commented about the fossil-free domestic aviation, but specific examples of programs like, for example, there is the Heart Aerospace, which I think it's a private project, right? It's a startup.
Startup, yes.
Then we have also some airports, I think, in Sweden that are also running their own programs. I think Swedavia, that is the airport operator, is also. They announced recently that they've gone fossil-free, I think, for their own operations. That doesn't include the flights, of course, because the technology is not yet there. But all the ground operations,
I think interesting with Swedavia as well is that they are actually all their business travels are done on sustainable aviation fuel.
Okay.
All of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually buy. So they were one of the first customers that I had in Flygreenfund.
Mm-hmm.
So they are buying all their, and that's quite a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
they have helped, I would say, very much in the changes that's been done here in Sweden, and also a reason for why we are in the front line. But I would say the work they done is actually also helped globally, because they not only pay for their business travel, they also prepare for it at their airports. So for example, Arlanda, the Stockholm Arlanda airport, that was the first airport in the world where we used the same infrastructure as the fossil infrastructure for sustainable aviation fuel. And for an outsider, it could seem like, is that so much? But yes, it is, because we are showing that it's possible. And that makes other ones to come and see what they've done at Stockholm Arlanda, and it also makes other inspired to do the same.
But may I ask you, what is the challenge? I mean, do you have to set up a different infrastructure for sustainable aviation fuel? So you need to duplicate things like fuel depots and stuff like pipelines and stuff like that? Or what are the challenges for this not to be more widespread?
Yeah, you mean for sustainable aviation
Yeah.
fuel then in specific? Yeah, 'cause it's different. I mean, at the moment, it's still so rare, so it's more or less a project for every country or for every delivery. So, for example, in Sweden, it comes to an harbor, Gävle harbor. That's where we get the fuel, the sustainable aviation fuel, and that is of course certified. Then at the harbor, it gets certified. It gets mixed with fossil fuel to 50%, and then that needs to be certified again. And then you can, for example, if it's going to Arlanda, it's going by train in a truck, and then when it comes to Arlanda, it goes down in the pipeline. So from there, we actually don't know which airplane it comes to. It will spread and come to all the, but that's the way we would like to do it, of course, because that's the most efficient way to get most out of our money. But then also at the Gävle, there could also be trucks that then will take the fuel to the airport. The smaller airports, they have tanks instead of the fuel system underneath the ground.
And I read that there are some airports in Sweden as well that are doing some testing on new propulsion technologies as well. Is this also sponsored by all these organizations? What can you tell us about all this?
It's you mean now that's mainly for electric aviation. We have one. We have both one in Östersund, where the Green Flyway, where we work together with the Norwegians.
Okay.
And then there's another one, is the FAIR project, that's the Swedes and the Finns working together. And now we're trying to put these two together as well.
The one with the one with Finland, is it the one in I think it's called the Kvarken region?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I spoke with them. There's a post in the Allplane website. I'm gonna post a link in the footnotes, so the people can learn more about that. It's an interesting one, yeah.
It is, and they work more with how can regions develop to meet the demands of electric aviation. Yep. In Östersund, they are building a test bed, just like we in Sweden, in the north of Sweden, we have test arenas for cars, because it's very good to try them there since it's very cold and snowy and everything. So if they work there, they will work more or less everywhere. So Östersund would like to do the same thing for electric aviation. And also there's a lot of airspace between, for example, Trondheim and Östersund. And then you get to try it over two countries, and also, well, there's airspace, so it's a good area to test. Then we also have a test area where we are testing autonomous
Okay.
aviation more, and autonomous
like drones
air
and,
towers as
yeah.
well. Yeah, and so we have the autonomous air tower there. We also have drones, and they are also looking into more around electric aviation as well. So we have different, and then we have one in the southern part of Sweden that's more about drones as well. So that's different test areas, and they are very much, I would say, partly paid by the state and different calls. And then we have, besides Heart Aerospace, we also have Katla Aviation, and we have Blackwing, or they are calling themselves more or less Greenwing now. They are going more into electric.
So, I read about them. Yeah, lots going on.
It is.
Yeah.
And what we see now in the new application, and I hope that this goes through, so we get some money for that as well. Then we call it the Blue Light organization. You have the ambulance, you have the when you watch the seas, sea rescue, mountain rescue organizations and things like that. And they have also now applied to get some money, so they can use their projects that are looking into if you can use drones to find people in the mountains when it's very bad, when the weather is very bad, for example, or out at the sea. But there's also the more traditional organizations that we have, the sea rescue and the mountain rescue, that are looking into if they can use sustainable aviation fuel or electric aviation for their work. So now it's kind of
search and rescue applications. Yeah. So you're developing also that part.
So what we hope, what I think would be a very good thing, is if our governments, and we see it more maybe in Norway, because in Norway they have more roads in Norway that are already paid by the government, because as you said earlier, they're so small, so the government helped to pay for them. We have some of that in Sweden, but what we hope as well is that our governments are getting in there, and when they buy these services, that they buy them sustainable. That they set the rule that it needs to be sustainable. And for example, when the king and the queen has their airplane, that of course should go on sustainable aviation fuel or should be electric. The same goes for the governmental travel. That should be on sustainable aviation fuel, or it should be on electric, because that would help to increase the demand. And the more we can increase the demand, hopefully we get also the market up and running. Because I do think that's the problem now, and I think that's something we are thinking more about now with electric aviation, because if we look into sustainable aviation fuel, yes, we have been working a lot with the technical development, but we have the technical development, but we have a very hard time to get it commercialized. Something happens there, that we have all the technical parts, and then we start arguing who will pay and where will the costs be. And it's not that strange, because this is new. It's a new way of working, is new organizations that need to work with each other, and the value chain is not set yet. It's difficult to know where are the risks, where are the benefits, and we have kind of, I think, this is my personal view, kind of ignored that and just looked into the technical path and make that possible. And I think we need to make this work more together. This is a change on the system level. So it's sustainable mobility. So we need to make all this work together and not fight each other, but work together and build the market. And I think we should do that from the beginning now with electric aviation, that we see to it that we build step by step, we build also the market and the demand and the technical solutions need to go hand by hand.
Yeah, Definitely. And well, you have one of the projects that is getting more attention in the world right now is this hard aerospace in Sweden. I had the chance to see some videos where it's explained how they work. And I guess they must be pretty close to having a flying prototype.
There is a small prototype
Uh-huh.
sized down already in place in Säve. You have the propellers, they are already in place and full scale and working up and running. They have also built what you call that, the seats and
The cabin.
the body, the cabin.
Yes.
So you can actually try to sit in the plane already. So yes, there are some things in place and a very good simulation station that they have as well. So you can try to fly it and sit in the cockpit. So it's getting closer and closer. They are in line with the project time lines. So it's it's very exciting, and
what's the time
really
frame? What's the time frame?
2026
for operations, or
when the first plane will be in use.
In regular use. So not the first flight, but enter into service. So I guess it needs to be certified first.
So yeah, it depends, of course, a lot about that as well. But our Heart Aerospace are working close with EASA. And also it's the same certification process as Pipistrel. That's why it's an ES19. So it could keep the same. And we have the first Swedish certified Pipistrel on the same airport where the Heart Aerospace is being built.
I had the Pipistrel founder here on the podcast as well a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I'll add a note as well to the show notes so that people can check out this very interesting company as well from Slovenia.
Yeah.
Very
and
good.
It's actually the flight school at Säve Airport that have bought in the Pipistrel, so they can now in parallel also train the new pilots. So it's a puzzle, but it seems like everyone is taking their piece, and if they do, then we will
so
see the regional buses with wings quite soon.
the whole ecosystem is taking place in Sweden and the Nordics. That's going to be interesting to see, because it looks like it's going to be one of the very first regions in the world that it's going to be experiencing all this whole new world of aviation for real, if everything goes according to plan.
We will do a tour with the Pipistrel with the Gothenburg Flight School this summer, where we will fly both ways. Back and forth between some parts, both in Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, and where we will also tell the story about the future of electric aviation.
Sounds exciting. Very well.
Yes.
So we'll have to keep an eye on all the interesting stuff that is happening there in Scandinavia. If people want to learn more about what you guys do up there in the north, what is the best way? What are the best resources they should check? Is there a specific website that you would recommend or you would direct people to?
At the moment, since there is kind of a gap right now between for the fossil-free aviation 2045, this is something we are working on, and but the website that we had for the project would probably be closed quite soon. And we have just started the Economic Association that will bring this forward. So if you just give us some time, there will soon be a project, a place. But if I try to post things on LinkedIn, and I try to post things on Twitter, for example, in the meantime, because one part why we are joining together in these ecosystems and networks is because we want to share. We want this to happen, and we have the possibility here in the Nordics to maybe move a little bit ahead. So we are happy to do so, but of course this is a global matter. So we need to do this together, and aviation is very global. All the all the security and all the, now I'm losing words.
Yeah, no
To say
problem.
when you need to have the all the standards
Yeah.
and everything that needs to be global.
Yeah.
We can try it out because we do have the network, we have the ecosystem in place, we have the electricity that's already zero carbon in most or close to zero carbon in our Nordic countries. We also have the forestry, so it's so many things that we could actually try out here. And then you asked, we haven't really talked that much about policies and the governmental, but we also, as you know, we also have the quota systems. In Norway, it's already implemented. In Sweden, it will be implemented in the summer. So we also are in one way forerunners in that sense as well.
You mean the mandate for sustainable aviation fuel?
Yeah. And we also have the taxes and the tax on aviation as well. And we can, it would of course be much easier if it was a global carbon tax on everything. So it would be similar, because it is difficult for our airliners and airports to be ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to some of those policies.
Yeah.
But I think that that's also part of, we talked about flight shame earlier. So we have a higher demand, I think, on being, sometimes I think maybe globally, that you think that we are running maybe a little bit too fast and that we are doing our own solutions. But if we look at it from our standpoint, it's in the context where we are living, we cannot say that we will have 50% less emissions from the aviation industry 2050. It's not good enough for the context we live in. So we need to find other solutions and other goals. And hopefully that could be, we hope that could be a help for the rest of the world as well. Globally, we are seen upon that we are troublemakers because we do it in one way, in our own way, or we do it a little bit more than maybe what we have agreed upon on a global level. But from the context where we live in, if we want the aviation to continue, and we do, because we see the benefits of aviation, then we need to find solutions, and we need to find it faster than maybe what we are aiming for on a global level.
Yeah, certainly you are taking a leadership role here, guiding the industry towards all these new paths. I mean, there has to be someone leading the pack, right? So,
and I would say, the industry in Sweden are taking a high stake. The aviation industry in Sweden and the Nordics are taking a high stake, but they are very willing to do it. And I find it very inspiring for all of us to work with them, because this is difficult. Sometimes the industry here in the Nordics, they get yelled at by the society, because it's around all this with flight shame and everything. Yeah, they're troublemakers. They are not doing enough. And then when they go out in the world and talk to their colleagues in the world, they get yelled at because they think they are doing too much.
Yeah.
So they have a really difficult role, I would say, but a very important role. And also, when we talked about flight shame before, what's important as well, I think, yes, it's sometimes we think it's difficult, and you get in discussions that are where you kind of get stuck. But most of the time, I would say that it's a healthy discussion, because it makes us move forward. We need to do something. We need to find solutions. We need to be innovative. We need to be open to all kinds of technical solutions that we can find, because we also see that we have, from a Swedish point of view, we are a big export country. We need to get out there to see our customers, to to work with together with the rest of the world. Otherwise, we will not have any work or any jobs in Sweden either. We are very dependent on global export. And also, I think that what we see happening in the world right now is kind of scary in a lot of parts of the world, when we are kind of closing up and more take care of our own and our own countries and what we need and what we have to do. And I don't believe in that kind of world. I don't want my children and grandchildren to grow up in that kind of world. I want a global world where we live together and we work together and we try to find solutions together. And to do so, I think we need to meet. I think it's fantastic that we can meet like this in cyberspace. But I do think that we also need to really connect. We need to meet in real life as well. And I think that's really super important, both to find the solutions for the climate, but also to keep peace and an open world and a democratic world. Therefore, I want to work with, and I hope we will find the solutions for a more sustainable aviation, because that's the way, at least what we know now, that's the way we can travel long distance.
Indeed. Very well. So yeah, happy to help showcase all these initiatives from this very modest platform, and to get the word out and to give diffusion to all the good work that you are doing there in Scandinavia. So Maria, it's been a great pleasure, and hopefully won't be the last time that we get to speak about progress that you guys are making up there in the north. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I love to talk about it.
I can see that. Well, we need to then set up another conversation and keep track of all these interesting projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before you go, and if you like this podcast, a quick reminder that it would be absolutely great if you could please give it a rating on Apple, Spotify, or whichever platform you're using, or recommend it to a friend or whomever might be interested. Thank you very much, and see you soon.